Some towns do not appear on tourist maps, not because they are missing, but because they exist where no one thinks to look. Locations where the cold stops your breath, roads vanish, and houses cling to vertical cliffs or frozen valleys. Today, we are visiting 12 of the most hidden towns on the planet, real, inhabited locations, so remote they seem impossible to reach. Not legends, but documented human outposts. Longyearbyen, Norway. In the high Arctic, 650 miles from the North Pole, stands a town where the laws of nature have forced the human residents to adopt some of the most unusual rules on the planet. Longyearbyen is the largest settlement in the Svalbard archipelago, a territory roughly the size of West Virginia, where the sun disappears entirely for 4 months of the year. During the polar night, the town is submerged in a darkness so thick that residents must navigate by the glow of streetlights and headlamps. This is not just a remote outpost. It is a landscape where the ground itself is permanently frozen to a depth of 1,500 feet. Because of this permafrost, it is illegal to be buried in Longyearbyen. Bodies do not decompose in the frozen soil, a fact discovered in the late 20th century when researchers found perfectly preserved traces of the 1918 flu virus in a local cemetery. If a resident is nearing the end of their life, they are flown to the Norwegian mainland to ensure they can be laid to rest. The extreme environment dictates every aspect of daily life, including the requirement for anyone leaving the town limits to carry a high-caliber rifle. There are approximately 3,000 polar bears across the archipelago, outnumbering the human population of 2,500. The threat is so constant that students at the local university are required to pass a firearms safety course before they can begin their academic studies. Even the simple presence of pets is strictly regulated, as cats have been banned from the island since the 1990s to protect the local bird populations. In this frozen corner of the world, survival is not a given, but a carefully managed operation against the elements. Ittoqqortoormiit Greenland. On the eastern edge of Greenland sits a settlement so isolated that its name is often the only thing more difficult to navigate than the terrain itself. Ittoqqortoormiit was established in 1925 by Danish settlers and Inuit families who sought to reclaim the hunting grounds of the Scoresby Sund, the largest and deepest fjord system in the world. For 9 months of the year, the sea ice is so thick that ships cannot reach the town, effectively cutting off the 400 residents from the rest of civilization. During this period, the only way in or out is by a long-range helicopter flight that depends entirely on the unpredictable Arctic weather. The physical environment here is defined by extremes, with winter temperatures regularly plunging to 40 degrees below zero. In these conditions, the colorful wooden houses of the town serve as more than just shelter. They are visual markers in a landscape that can become a total whiteout in minutes. The local economy remains deeply tied to traditional subsistence, with hunters following strict government quotas for polar bears, muskoxen, and narwhals. These quotas are monitored by the Greenlandic government to ensure the long-term survival of both the wildlife and the community. Scientific researchers often use the town as a base to study the melting of the Greenland ice sheet, which holds enough water to raise global sea levels by over 20 feet if it were to disappear entirely. Living here requires a specific type of psychological endurance, where the arrival of the first supply ship in mid-July is the most significant event of the calendar year. Ittoqqortoormiit is a testament to human persistence in a region where the ice defines the boundaries of the possible. Castellfollit de la Roca, Spain. High above the Fluvia and Torinel rivers in the province of Girona, a town sits on a strip of land that seems to defy the laws of gravity and urban planning. Castellfollit de la Roca is built on a basalt cliff that rises 160 feet into the air, a natural wall formed by the cooling of lava from 2 separate volcanic eruptions hundreds of thousands of years ago. The cliff stretches for nearly a mile, but it is only 2 houses wide at its narrowest point. From a distance, The medieval stone structures appear to grow directly out of the dark rock, creating a silhouette that is visible for miles across the surrounding volcanic park. The history of the town is a record of people utilizing the geography for defense, turning a precarious ledge into a natural fortress that was nearly impossible to besiege. The older section of the town consists of a single narrow street where the front doors of the houses face each other, while the back balconies hang directly over the abyss. Walking these streets feels like navigating a tightrope, as the basalt beneath the pavement is the only thing separating the residents from the riverbed far below. Geologists have confirmed that the unique basalt columns forming the cliff are a rare phenomenon resulting from the specific way the lava contracted as it cooled. Despite the dramatic drop-offs, the town has been continuously inhabited for over 1,000 years, surviving multiple earthquakes and the erosion of the riverbanks. The San Salvador Church, situated at the very tip of the cliff, serves as a silent marker of the community's commitment to this vertical landscape. It is a place where the space for expansion ended centuries ago, forcing the town to remain frozen in its medieval dimensions. Masula, Iran. Tucked into the Alborz Mountains of northern Iran is a town where the concept of a street has been completely reimagined. Masule was founded over 1,000 years ago at an elevation of 3,500 feet, built into a slope so steep that the inhabitants had to invent a new way to construct their homes. In this town, the roof of one house serves as the courtyard or the street for the house directly above it. This interconnected web of clay and wood means that the entire settlement functions as a single, multi-level structure. Motor vehicles are strictly prohibited within the town limits because the architecture literally cannot support the weight of a car. The yellow clay used to coat the exterior of the buildings is more than a stylistic choice. It was selected for its ability to reflect light and remain visible through the thick mountain fog that frequently rolls through the valley. This fog is a constant presence in the humid climate of the Gilan province, where the rainfall is significantly higher than in the rest of central Iran. Historically, the town was a vital trading hub on the Silk Road, providing a defensible refuge for merchants traveling between the Caspian Sea and the interior of the country. The design allowed residents to move through the entire town without ever stepping onto level ground, a strategy that also helped manage the heavy winter snowfalls. Today, the population of 800 maintains the traditional crafts of the region, including the production of hand-knitted socks and silk products that have been made in these same rooms for generations. Masule remains a rare example of human architecture, fully surrendering to the contours of the mountain, creating a vertical community that is as much a part of the hillside as the earth itself. Ushguli, Georgia. At the foot of Mount Shkara, the highest peak in Georgia, sits a collection of 4 villages known as Ushguli. Located at an altitude of 7,000 feet in the Svaneti region, it is recognized as one of the highest continuously inhabited settlements in all of Europe. The landscape is dominated by over 200 medieval stone towers, known as Svan Towers, which were constructed between the 9th and 12th centuries. These structures were not just for show. They were fortified family homes designed to protect the residents from both foreign invaders and the frequent avalanches that plagued the region. Each tower was built with multiple levels, with the bottom floor used for livestock and the upper floors for living quarters and defense. The isolation of Ushguli is so profound that the local Svan people have maintained their own distinct language and customs, which are separate from Standard Georgian. During the winter months, the single road connecting the village to the town of Mestia is often buried under 6 feet of snow, leaving the residents cut off from the modern world for up to 6 months at a time. This environmental barrier has acted as a time capsule, preserving a way of life that has vanished elsewhere in the Caucasus. In 1996, the area was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site to protect its unique blend of mountain scenery and medieval architecture. The threat of climate change is a growing concern here, as the melting of the nearby Shkara Glacier increases the risk of flooding and landslides that could bury the ancient stone towers. Life in Ushguli is a constant negotiation with the mountains, where the heavy stone walls provide the only security against the unpredictable shifts of the high-altitude terrain. Iruya, Argentina. Deep in the Salta province of northwestern Argentina, the town of Iruya appears like a mirage between the red peaks of the Andes. To reach this settlement, travelers must endure a 4-hour journey from the town of Humahuaca, crossing a mountain pass that reaches an elevation of 13,000 feet. The road is a series of treacherous switchbacks that are often washed away during the summer rainy season when the Iruya River swells and cuts off the only land access to the valley. The town itself is perched at 8,900 feet, with cobblestone streets so steep that they feel more like staircases. The houses are constructed from traditional adobe and stone, materials that provide natural insulation against the intense, high-altitude sun and the freezing nights of the desert. Iruya was officially founded in 1753, but the site had been occupied by indigenous communities for centuries prior, serving as a transit point between the high Puna Plateau and the fertile valleys below. The central landmark is the Church of San Roque and San Sebastian, whose yellow walls and blue trim stand out against the earthy tones of the surrounding cliffs. Despite its beauty, life here is physically demanding, as the thin air at this altitude makes even routine tasks a test of endurance. The 3,000 residents rely on small-scale agriculture, growing potatoes and corn on terraced plots that cling to the sides of the mountains. This is a region where the scale of the geography dwarfs any human presence, leaving the town to look like a small cluster of stones at the bottom of a massive prehistoric canyon. Popeye Village, Malta. In a secluded cove on the northwestern coast of Malta, there is a town that was never intended to last longer than a few months. Known as Sweet Haven, or Popeye Village, this settlement was constructed in 1979 as the primary film set for the musical production of Popeye, starring Robin Williams. Unlike most movie sets that are built from plywood and plaster, this village was constructed using hundreds of logs and thousands of wooden planks imported from the Netherlands and Canada because Malta lacks its own timber forests. A crew of 160 people worked for 7 months to build the 19 wooden structures, which were designed to look like a whimsical, weathered coastal town from the 1920s. To protect the set from the power of the Mediterranean Sea, a massive breakwater was constructed at the mouth of Anchor Bay. When filming concluded, the cost of dismantling the village was deemed too high, and the set was left to the elements. Over the following decades, the local community took over the site, maintaining the buildings and transforming the fictional town into a permanent, if unusual, settlement. The village is invisible from the main road and can only be seen by descending the steep limestone cliffs that surround the bay. Because the buildings are constructed entirely of wood in a very hot and dry climate, a sophisticated fire suppression system is integrated into the town to prevent a single spark from destroying the entire complex. While it lacks the deep historical roots of a medieval village, its survival is a fluke of logistics and geography. It remains a strange, man-made anomaly tucked into a gap in the rugged Maltese coastline. Gassadalur, Faroe Islands. Until the year 2004, the residents of Gassadalur on the island of Vegar were among the most isolated people in the North Atlantic. For generations, the only way to reach the neighboring villages was by hiking over a 1,400-foot mountain pass known as the Postmonastigur, or the Mailman's Path. This trail is so steep and dangerous that it was only used by the most physically fit members of the community, who would carry mail and essential supplies on their backs. The village sits on a high plateau surrounded by the highest peaks on Vegar, with a sheer cliff dropping 300 feet into the ocean on its western side. This cliff is home to the Monemvasia waterfall, which pours directly into the Atlantic and has become one of the most photographed natural features in the world. Despite its fame, the town nearly disappeared in the late 20th century as the population dwindled to just 16 people, mostly because the lack of a road made modern life impossible. The construction of a tunnel through the mountain was a desperate attempt to save the community from total abandonment. The tunnel is over a mile long and narrow, providing the first reliable link to the rest of the Faroe Islands. Even with the road, the village remains at the mercy of the weather. as the fierce Atlantic storms can produce winds strong enough to lift a car off the ground. The houses are small and sturdy, designed to withstand centuries of salt spray and gale-force winds. The opening of the tunnel changed the destiny of Gasadalur, but it did not change the fundamental reality of living on a rock in the middle of a cold and violent sea. Undredal, Norway. Located on the banks of the Orlens Fjord, a branch of the world-famous Sognefjord, the village of Undredal was accessible only by boat until 1988. The mountains surrounding the settlement rise nearly 3,000 feet vertically from the water's edge, leaving no room for a road to pass along the shoreline. For centuries, the 80 residents lived in a state of complete dependency on the fjord, which served as their only highway to the outside world. This isolation allowed the community to preserve traditions that have elsewhere been lost, most notably the production of brunost, a traditional brown goat cheese made with goat's milk and whey. There are currently over 500 goats living in the valley, outnumbering the human population by more than 5 to 1. The town is also home to the Undredal Stave Church, the smallest of its kind in Northern Europe, which has only 40 seats and dates back to the year 1147. The building is a masterpiece of medieval woodwork, featuring original paintings and carvings that have survived nearly 900 years in the damp coastal climate. The arrival of a road tunnel in the late 80s finally connected Undredal to the European highway system, but the town remains physically constrained by the narrow strip of land between the rock and the deep water. The fjord itself is over 3,000 feet deep in some sections, a reminder of the massive glacial forces that carve this landscape. In Undredal, the silence is not a lack of noise, but a presence that defines the rhythm of a community that has spent a millennium tucked into a fold of the Earth's crust. Bulnes, Spain. In the heart of the Picos de Europa National Park in northern Spain, the village of Bulnes was for centuries a place where the modern world simply did not reach. Located at an altitude of over 2,000 feet, the town is divided into two sections, Bulnes de Arriba and Bulnes de Abajo, both of which are surrounded by some of the most jagged limestone peaks in the Cantabrian Mountains. Until the year 2001, there was no way to reach the village other than a grueling 2-hour hike up a narrow, rocky mountain path. This path was used to transport everything from food and building materials to the deceased, often using donkeys to navigate the steep inclines. The isolation was so extreme that the town was one of the last in Spain to receive electricity and telephone service. This changed with the construction of a funicular railway, a cable-driven car that travels through a tunnel bored directly into the limestone of the mountain. The funicle covers a distance of over 7,000 feet in just 7 minutes, providing a lifeline for the few dozen permanent residents who remain. Despite this technological link, the town remains a cluster of traditional stone houses with no paved streets and no cars. The surrounding peaks, including the iconic Pico Urielu, tower over the valley, creating a natural amphitheater of rock that traps the winter snow and the summer heat. The funicular has brought tourism, but it has not altered the layout of the village, which remains a compact arrangement of stone and slate designed to withstand the crushing weight of mountain winters. Bulnes exists in a state of transition, caught between its history as a shepherd's refuge and its new identity as a gateway to the high peaks. Hallstatt, Austria. On a narrow strip of land between the Dachstein Mountains and the Hallstätter Sea, the town of Hallstatt occupies a space so limited that many of its houses are built directly over the water on wooden stilts. This is one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements in Europe, with a human history that stretches back 7,000 years. The reason for its existence in such a difficult location is salt. The salt mine located high above the town is the oldest in the world, and for millennia, it was the primary source of wealth for the region. Because there was no land access until the late 19th century, the salt was transported out by boat, and the town grew into a vertical maze of stone and timber. The lack of space was so critical that the local cemetery ran out of room centuries ago. To solve this, the residents began the practice of exhuming bodies after 10 to 15 years to make room for new ones. The skulls were cleaned, bleached by the sun, and hand-painted with flower motifs and the names of the deceased before being placed in the Beinhaus or bone house, which now contains over 1,200 skulls. This macabre tradition is a direct result of the town's geography, where every square foot of level ground is a precious resource. Today, the salt mine still operates, producing over 1 million tons of salt annually, though the town has shifted its focus to tourism. Despite its global fame and even a full-scale replica built in China, the original Hallstatt remains a place where the mountain and the lake dictate the limits of human architecture. Monemvasia, Greece. Off the coast of the Peloponnese, a massive limestone rock rises 300 feet out of the Aegean Sea, hiding a medieval fortress town that was designed to be invisible from the mainland. Monemvasia, whose name translates to single entrance, was founded in the 6th century by people fleeing the Slavic and Avar invasions of Greece. The rock was originally connected to the coast, but a massive earthquake in the year 375 AD separated it, creating an island that could only be reached by a narrow bridge. The town is split into two parts: the lower town, a labyrinth of Byzantine and Venetian houses, and the upper town, which sits on the flat summit of the rock. For centuries, Monemvasia was a major maritime hub and a prize for any empire seeking to control the eastern Mediterranean. It survived sieges by the Franks, the Venetians, and the Ottomans, protected by high walls and a geography that made it nearly impossible to storm. The upper town was once home to thousands of people and dozens of churches, but today it lies mostly in ruins, leaving the lower town as the primary inhabited area. There are no cars allowed inside the walls. All goods must be moved by hand or by donkey through the narrow, winding alleys. The stone used in the buildings is the same limestone as the rock itself, meaning that from the shore, the town blends perfectly into the cliffs. It is a settlement built on the principle of concealment, a fortress where the architecture was a weapon of defense against a violent world. The towns of the world are often measured by their growth, their connectivity, and their reach, but the locations we have explored today follow a different logic. They are communities defined by what they lack: space, warmth, or easy access. From the frozen ban on burials in Longyearbyen to the painted skulls of the Hallstatt bone house, these places represent a human refusal to leave, even when the environment makes staying an act of daily defiance. They show that people will build houses on volcanic cliffs, carve tunnels through North Atlantic mountains, and turn movie sets into permanent homes if the location offers something worth keeping. These are not just points on a map. They are the result of thousands of years of adaptation to the most difficult terrain the planet has to offer. If you want to continue exploring the most extreme and hidden corners of our world, subscribe to Forbidden Terrains. Leave a comment below and let us know which of these remote towns you would choose to visit, or tell us about a hidden location we should cover in a future video. If you found this look at the world's most isolated communities valuable, please leave a like. Thank you for watching.